With that, I would like to introduce our partner within this journey. We have Jessica Chu. She is the founder, the MD for this ILS. ILS is one of the only institute in Asia Pac that is allowed to provide services with regards to from the Growth Mindset Institute. So Jessica, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, nice to meet all of you, DNV friends, virtually.
Yeah,
yes.
Yes, I think we have about 15-20 minutes that I'll run through with Jessica's set of questions that I have, and for her to share with us, of course, the case study for Microsoft, but also other organizations that have, led successful transformation. And at this stage also, I would like to ask all of you, put your questions into Yammer, because we really like to hear your views, right? Especially considering then that we do not get the perfect five, whether in our vision or on our values. I always believe there's always room for improvement. So think about what are the things that you like to ask myself or like to ask Jessica, I think on this perspective. And then, towards the end, we will have this the Q&A that will involve then you from the audience, okay? Jessica, thanks again for coming over.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, you have a few questions that I'd like to ask to share based on your experience, We've seen then that, as like what we've seen in the Microsoft story, then that growth mindset has been recognized as one of the most, what we call it, influential psychological studies in recent decades, And then, of course, when talk about growth mindset, what is the opposite of it is a fixed mindset. So maybe if you can share what is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Sure. Well, I think I'd like to start this conversation with, the concept that behaviors really is a function of context and a mindset. And so whatever mindset we adopt, has a profound impact on the behaviors we adopt, on the way we approach things, right? So the difference between fixed and growth mindset is that fixed mindset, in a fixed mindset, you believe that your intelligence, your talents, and your abilities are more or less fixed. So as much as, you can learn, but, there is a limit to how you can progress. So with a fixed mindset, the focus would be, since all these abilities are innate, right? It cannot be changed. So the focus would be to prove, to demonstrate the abilities. So therefore, people, when you adopt a fixed mindset, you will more likely be focusing on how to do better than others. How do I demonstrate my abilities? How do I prove that I'm better? And you tend to want to stick to the areas that you are confident that you will do well. That is something that requires you to use the abilities that you're born with. Whereas in a growth mindset, you believe that talents and even personality and the other abilities can be developed with the right strategy and with the right effort. So with that belief, the growth mindset person, you tend to focus on learning, right? Challenging yourself. What can I learn from the journey instead of proving myself? So that's a major difference.
Okay. So then that's about the individual side, right, of the difference between the fixed and the growth mindset. But then going back in terms of the case study, right, why do you, see that the growth mindset is so important, especially for breakthrough? Of course, the Microsoft story is a clear-cut thing, right? Then there's a major transformation in terms of their culture and call it adoption of the growth mindset, And, so how is, this growth mindset then is become relevant, in the current, rapid transformation?
Well, we all know that in a process of transformation, people need to deal with a few things. One is uncertainty. The other one is that, it is not something that you do it and then you get success, right? I think you probably need to experiment. You probably need to try things a number of times, before you get success. So you need the perseverance. And also, when you do fail in the process, how do you deal with those failures? How do you have that resilience to deal with those failures? So I like to maybe borrow Microsoft's definition. I think, I mean, for those of you who read the case study, you know that Satya Nadella, he defines his emerging culture as that of a growth mindset culture. A culture where everyone is willing to stand up to challenges. Everyone is willing to experiment. They also have the empathy and the curiosity to learn new things, to learn from each other. So that's how Satya Nadella defines his emerging culture. And also, with many years, Carol Dweck, we work with Stanford University, Carol Dweck. And Carol Dweck and her team has spent more than 45 years in research, right? And these 45 years, both in the laboratory and the field, has proven that organizations with a growth mindset culture, they tend to do better in a few areas. One of the areas is what our colleague earlier, Dr. Imran, mentioned, trust. They tend to feel better in trust. They tend to feel better in terms of people's ownership and commitment. They tend to fare better in risk-taking, and of course, ultimately in innovation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, for us, I think, Jessica, as you know then that we are going through a new vision, and we have seen then that the industry, the world is impacted with these digital technologies, digital transformation. So on that perspective, also then that we also observe not many companies actually are successful to change the culture of, so then from the growth mindset perspective, how can the culture be like what we say Microsoft, the front runner, right, in today's what we call it digital era?
You're asking how do we go about develop that culture?
The culture, yeah.
Well, as I mentioned, Carol Dweck and team and many researchers have spent some 45 years researching on this topic. And we also found that it is actually quite easy to get it wrong. As much as people think that, growth mindset, fixed mindset, it is not so difficult to understand, but it's very easy to get it wrong. And many organizations think that, if I would just teach people what growth mindset is, if I would just have posters, if I just remind people, if I just demand that they have some kind of growth mindset behaviors, we would be a growth mindset organization. But it is not like that. So in order to build that culture, there are about 4 things that we need to put in place. One is that, of course, the leaders themselves, they need to be good role model by embracing growth mindset. They need to be coaching people with a growth mindset. So that is one thing that we find that it is very important. The second thing that we find that is very important is about the performance management practices. So the question we need to ask ourselves is that are our performance management practices helping or hindering growth mindset? For example, do people believe that they need to behave in a certain way to be rewarded? Do people need to believe that I need to be better than my colleagues, in order that I would be rewarded? All right. So if they have that kind of belief, then obviously, we will hinder their growth mindset. All right. They will be less likely to experiment, but rather proving their own abilities. So that is the second one. The third one is about the feedback culture. Are we giving feedback? Do we know how to give feedback in a growth mindset way? And are the feedback helping or hindering people's performance? So that is the third thing. And the fourth thing is how do we set goals? Do we only set performance goals? Do we only measure performance? Or do we also set goals about development? All right, do we focus people on growing, on taking up challenges and developing? So these are the 4 things that we would recommend our client organizations to put in place if they're serious about building the growth mindset culture.
Okay, that's quite a good advice. So I guess from your advice that you have given, it appears that ILS must have worked also with other organizations in Asia, right,
Yes.
to introduce growth mindset. Maybe can you share, some of your experience, of working with your other customers, and how has that impact in the way they do things that led to a better performance?
Right. Well, I'd like to first introduce Growth Mindset Institute. They are one organization who work directly and closely with Professor Carol Dweck, and are involved and has got first-hand knowledge about the tools that she developed, and they also have developed assessment, validation instruments that are validated by Professor Carol Dweck, who we all know is the originator of this concept. So ILS role is that we work very closely with GMI, Growth Mindset Institute. We are the exclusive partner, probably the only partner in this part of the world who are licensed to bring about the solutions, the tools, the methodologies, the frameworks to help the organizations and individuals in this market to embrace growth mindset and to develop a growth mindset culture.
Okay. Yeah, but has there been any experience you want to share in terms of for the customers that you work with in this part of the world?
Oh yeah, I think there are many organizations we work with, spanning from maritime industry. We do work with many global organizations in the maritime industry. We work with airlines. We work with airport operation. Of course, in Singapore, there's only one, the Changi Airport Group. We also work with hotels, banks, finance organizations to help them foster the growth mindset culture. So some of the things that we found out and we do with the organization is that from our research and from growth mindset's work, we found that the best way to foster the growth mindset is really not to, to just teach growth mindset and to tell people that you need to have growth mindset, but rather it is to help people be aware of their triggers. We all of us are a mixture of fixed and growth mindset. So there is no such thing as I'm a fixed mindset person or a growth mindset person. So the methodology very much is to help individuals, leaders, recognize that they have both, and to recognize their own fixed mindset triggers, to befriend the triggers, to learn to tackle and manage the triggers. And once they're able to do that, you find that they will spend relatively more time in a growth mindset and area, and that also helps the organization grow.
So maybe can we leave, we open the question to the floor. Anyone any question? Yes, Christina?
Yes, thank you so much, Jessica. Very, very interesting and very, good thoughts that will trigger the way forward for us. So which advice would you give us? And I also I believe in taking micro steps, because sometimes the goal is very far away. So which micro steps could we take to embark on this growth mindset?
Thank you. I mean, that's a very interesting question. I would say the first thing which is most important is to recognize that we are a mixture of fixed and growth mindset. And not get too excited once we learn that growth mindset is good, declare that I'm a growth mindset person and that is it. So that is one. Second is to recognize that this is a journey, and so what we need to do is to be mindful and to be aware of our own fixed mindset triggers, and to experiment with strategies to deal with those fixed mindsets. So these are the two most important tips that I could give.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lucas?
Just maybe an extra sort of dose of inspiration from you. I mean, we are in maritime business, and you mentioned that you are cooperating with the maritime industry. Of course, we have broad industry, multiple segments, offshore, bulker, container. So can you give us some hints in terms of, from your perspective, which owners, operators are more developed than others? Do you have any names that you could give us? Because we're also observing that some companies are progressing faster than the others, and for us it will be interesting to understand whether these are the companies that actually have embarked on this growth mindset culture.
Okay, well, I would prefer to have a private conversation on that rather. Well, actually, interestingly, our work, we found that in our work, the results we get is very correlated with the findings in the laboratory, by universities, Texas, Stanford, Indiana University, is that growth mindset is directly proportionate to how innovative an organization can be, and ultimately their performance. So to answer your question, you just look at some of these organizations. Who are the organizations in this industry that you think they are very innovative, that the performance have leapfrog, and likely these are the organizations who have embraced growth mindset, and we probably would have worked with them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We can tell you in private probably. Yes. Question from the Yama group. Yeah.
We have one question from Yema for Jessica. What are some of the low-hanging fruits companies can target when transforming to a growth mindset culture?
Okay, thank you. Low-hanging fruits. That's a very interesting question. And in fact, in the course of transformation, we talk about that a number of times, Shireen, is that, in transformation, a lot of time the first thing organizations do is that, okay, we need to transform, we need to embrace digitization. So the first thing they do is to bring in new technologies. So that's often the first step. And then, you look at organizations who are more mature in this journey, you realize that other than bringing in technology, then look at, what about the processes? Let's reinvent our processes. We need to make some changes to the processes. So that's usually the second step they do. And then the third step, these organizations probably recognize that, hey, we need to give people digitization skills. So we need to send people for training on digitization skills. So skill set, the third thing. But very often we find that people are lacking on the fourth step, which is, in my view, one of the most important if we want the transformation to be sustainably successful. And that is the mindset. We upgrade processes, we upgrade technology, we upgrade our skills, but what about the mindset? Are we upgrading the mindset? And so I would say that, the fourth thing is very important, but it's often neglected. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a low-hanging fruit, but it's really one of the most important, if we want sustainable success in this journey. And of course, growth mindset is one thing that, we could embrace in this journey as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, there's... thanks a lot, Jessica. I think that's clear in terms of your response, based on, of course, the research that Professor Dweck have done, and yourself, ILS, collaborating with the Growth Mindset Institute. I think that there's one question that I have, in order for us to be on the right path, I guess then that, if you just use the word growth mindset by itself may sound, then that it's about growing, but to make sure that we're on the right path, what are based on the experience, what are the common misconceptions of the growth mindset, and where do people have gone wrong, so then that ensure that we will start at the right, at the right path, at the right journey.
Thank you. I think I talk about that also. It is very easy to have a false growth mindset. In fact, that was a finding by Susan McKee of Growth Mindset Institute. She's the founder. She discovered that a few years ago, and she brought it to Carol Dweck, and they've done some research on that, and we discovered that it's actually very easy for organizations to adopt a false growth mindset. So what is a false growth mindset? False growth mindset is thinking that, I can switch to a growth mindset. And I can either be a growth or a fixed mindset. And so we realize that, for people who embrace false growth mindset, one of the behaviors you see is that they start to label people. That, you are a fixed mindset person. That is a fixed mindset person. That is a growth mindset person. So that is one clear symptom that they are embarking on a false growth mindset a journey. So, we warn against organizations that, as much as research shows that growth mindset is very helpful, it does help in a journey. We need to do it in a right way, so as not to foster the false growth mindset. So, yeah.
Thanks. So it's important that we don't start label each other, whether you're fixed or your growth mindset, right? I think that's a really important message, Jessica. Thanks a lot. So I think my session, yes, I think I'm right on time. For me, thank you for listening. The 3 key messages that I have, I think first one is to stay safe. And stay safe is just not about you, but thinking through, right? If what happens to you, it will happen to your loved ones, your family, right? So think it through, right? Stay safe from that perspective too. Second one is to make work meaningful. When I say it's meaningful, meaning that whatever you do is something that your customers must value. Something then that the stakeholders value and that you are really creating an impact, right? So impact not just to the organization that we work with, but also towards society as well as to the current and future generation. So whatever we do, think through that way, that we make work to be meaningful. And the last one, but not least, have a growth mindset, right? So we used to think that as DNVGL, we spend so much money on R&D, things like that we know it all. But the growth mindset is not about we think that we know it all, but we learn it all. There's always room for us to learn, and there's always room for us to embrace, work with each other to get that feedback, right, at the perspective, and then for us to have this different mindset.